Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Select Board meeting of October 3rd, 2024. We're going to start with a roll call. We have Denise Luciano.
Here.
We have Roger Marsan, we have Alec Rich, and myself, Steve Hornsby. Kevin Snyder was not able to make it. He's away on business. So now let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a small agenda, it looks like, but don't let it fool you because we're going to be here for a little bit. Right off the bat, we have an appointment of a new town clerk for interim. Do you want to talk about it, Mike?
Sure. We have an appointment for Marilee Kenny Hunt, and Marilee was the clerk in Bridgewater and retired in May and has volunteered to come work for us through this election season. It's going to be a great help, and I know that Marilee has a daughter and son-in-law that are residents of Norton, and her daughter's on the Conservation Commission. Do you want to come up and, you don't have to say any.
Just
No.
go
On the
and show my
spot.
face. Do you want me to go up there?
You don't have, unless you're,
With the Zoom, I don't care.
you don't have to, it's okay, we don't want to make you uncomfortable. But I do want to say thank you for stepping in so quickly, it's very much appreciated.
You're welcome, and it's hard to make me uncomfortable.
Stick around.
Then you've come to the right place. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson.
I make a motion that we appoint Marilee Kenny Hunt as the town clerk.
Second. As of effective date October 2nd.
I'm sorry, as of, let's see, it says October 2nd, yes.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
May I,
Opposed?
we make sure that it's just interim town clerk or?
No, too late, too late.
I think that vote has already gone through. Thank you, Marilee.
We will redo that, yeah, we'll redo that real quick. Roger.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson.
I'd like to amend that motion to make it a, I'm sorry, how long did you say?
For permanent?
Well, interim doesn't say length, so just keep it
Right,
interim.
yeah, for interim town clerk for the town of Norton, effective October 2nd.
Second. Okay, once again, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and again, thank you very much. Okay. I guess we're gonna review and discuss or vote and or revote on the fall annual town meeting articles. Since we have some presentations, do we wanna do those first?
Sure, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that way we don't have to have them staying here forever. We'll start with, Down Street Water and Sewer, that's Article 13 in your packets.
Oh, whis-
Yeah, you can come on up, we have. Unfortunately, we don't have our screen set up yet, so we do have your presentation in our packet, so we'll flip through with it.
All right, so you don't have to advance nobody's going to be advancing the slides.
Correct.
No. We're doing it on Zoom? Anybody?
Chair,
Paul?
Mr. Chair.
I'm trying to add it, but I don't see an opportunity to do share screen on this.
I think you have to get the permission from.
I'll get it.
Is Charlie listening? Anybody have any good jokes in the meantime? No.
We said good jokes, Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
Just here you every night at 10 o'clock.
While you're waiting, I can
Okay, use of free cash.
So I just wanted to give you suggestions on the use of free cash. Right now, the free cash balance was $6,524,039. I'd recommend that we put $1 million in stabilization, $1,500,000 in capital, $125,000 in OPEB. So that would leave $3,899,039. Then the articles for town meeting, engineering drainage improvement, $50,000. Schematic design for the middle school roof, $50,000. Separation expense, $163,159. Pond management for the treatment of the ponds, $200,000. Prior year bills, $1,884. And right now, the budget supplement, the drafts, right now add up to $783,361. And then if you hold $280,000 technically for snow and ice, that would leave a balance of $2,370,635 to carry to next year.
Okay. Do we have a breakdown of the budget supplements?
Paul, did you get access yet? No?
Not yet.
So right now, the largest budget supplements are the police department, $81,616 for the overtime. That's 75% of the overtime that was cut in the spring. $5,000 for expense also. Fire, $174,765. And same thing, that's 75% of the overtime that was cut in the spring. And expenses, $15,000. Emergency medical expenses, $23,100. The school department, $321,292 to reinstate staff positions. And $160,802 anticipated new cases not within sped budget and sped out of district new collaborative placement. And the reserve fund, I proposed, the reserve fund was reduced in the spring, and I propose $50,000 to bring that back up to where it has been every year. Conservation, $10,700 expense. Data processing, $14,719, and salary, $60,339 in expense. And then there's the rest of the highway department needs $9,500. It's an expense to repair their sweeper repair and a J-hook. And then Council on Aging, they've had volunteers step forward to drive their van. So $1,525 for expenses for the van. Recreation needs $2,400. Melissa came to me and realized that they have to add more wood chips down at the Tricentennial Park. And she also wants to upgrade the security system down at the ELP. That'd be $849. And then another $1,000 restoring the memorial investments back to where it was when it was cut in the spring. Those are just some of the,
Okay. Are we able to use some of that free cash for, I had mentioned, I think, last week and prior to the DPW position, director position. Not the salary, but the initial one-time cost, the recruitment, cars, things like that.
we could use some of it for recruitment. I don't know if you'd want to buy a car if we don't have anyone in the position yet.
Yeah, I remember I asked months ago, back in the spring about this, and the cost was, I think it was like $250K, and that was for salary plus a vehicle plus whatever else. So that's why I wanted to get those one-time expenses covered, and then the salary we could deal with on the budget next year. So I'd like to add. I mean, personally, I'd like to add that in.
Through you, Chair.
Good. Yeah.
I personally would not be in favor of adding another position at that level when we can't afford to keep the positions that we've had over the last several years. We just cut a bunch of positions. So I think before we start adding another high-cost position that is an occurring expense over and over again, that we think about reinstating some of what we lost first.
Anyone else?
I believe most of what some of this free cash is going to is a lot of those.
2. Based on what Mike just read.
Pretty sure it's more than that. But
Do we have, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Massey?
Is there anybody here from the school department that could help us understand this $321,000 for school personnel?
I think Mike just read it off. Those 2 people that were reinstating.
I went to the meeting and I had to go.
I don't want to do an injustice, but Nick did go over it with me, and I know it was, I believe it was more than 2 positions, but it was music and foreign languages, which would be a couple. No, not foreign languages. I'm getting no. Okay. In the middle school, for the middle school. No? Okay, I'm way off. So,
I know they're going to be at the finance committee on Monday night to talk about it, and so I'll get back to you.
2 more questions, so I apologize, Chair. Some of the stuff that you read off in the budget supplement sounded like they were one-time fees. Why would those be in budget supplements and not in capital?
I don't think,
Like the security equipment for the park, for instance, was an example.
yeah, it's only $849, so.
I know, I just think budget is right, the recurring expenses, and if we don't want to put it in there and then have that be an accepted
Right.
recurring expense, right? Because it's supposed to be one time.
And one thing that isn't in here yet, we have to add money to the town clerk budget, because we won't have a part-time clerk, we'll have a full-time clerk, so.
And one last question, my apologies, but in OPEB, I see that we're having to go to free cash for the fall for 163,159. Is separation OPEB, right?
No, OPEB is just for retiree health insurance costs.
So it's just a part of separation.
Right, it doesn't cover any of the vacation that's owed people that retire, or any sick leave that's owed people that retire. Just, it covers retiree health insurance.
So that increase of 163 is mostly the vacation buybacks, that kind of stuff?
Vacation that's owed or sick leave buyback.
Okay.
It would be okay if we could go forward.
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So let's wrap this one up, and then we can move on to the water. Oh, I guess we're not voting on this yet because we don't have the exact amounts. Okay, that's just a draft, so there will be some work done on that. Okay, yeah, you can present now. I'm sorry for the delay.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Steve Peterson with Weston and Sampson Engineers. Frank Fournier is also here from the Water and Sewer Department. And Paul Giuseppe, the town planner, is also going to provide some input to this discussion. So just on the slides that you have, I guess the second one, as far as introductions and agenda. As far as the project overview, I'm not going to go into any details about the specifics. We can do that if people have questions. It is water and sewer infrastructure in the Elm Street neighborhood is the project that we're talking about. What we really want to focus on is item 2, the other project considerations. And I want to break it into the 2 issues that seem to be driving the discussion on this project. One of them is the biggest, is the reason we're even here, and that is 47 Elm Street. Its importance to the town and what this project means to that property. And then Paul will give some background on that too. And even before we get into a lot of detail on that, the second issue is how this directly impacts the residents of Elm Street and Villa Terrace in that area. Quick background on how it's set up, and then we want to discuss an alternative option that we think addresses the major concerns, if there really are concerns that are going to prevent this project from moving forward. So we'll get into that. And that kind of, that will cover the, the cost recovery stuff. And then just, all along we'll talk about the, the public outreach, how we got to here, but most importantly, where do we go from here. So the next slide is kind of the key one. So I said two issues. We have 47 Elm Street. The improvement, development of 47 Elm Street is the driving force behind this project. If it wasn't for that property out there, this project wouldn't have come before us and we wouldn't be where we are right now. It's been identified as a priority economic target area. It's been identified there are limitations to what we can do with that property based on the existing infrastructure. And that's why the town applied for secured grants for the project. The grants are the catalyst. We got grant money to do the design, paid completely by grants, and we have a grant in place, $3.5 million to go towards the construction of this project to make the improvements to the infrastructure out there. The consequences, I guess, of not moving forward with some form of this project now is that, that grant's going to run out. This town meeting is our last opportunity to vote it in time to do the project and take advantage of the grant. So it will never be more cost effective to do this project than now. So those are kind of the facts there. So the direct impacts to the local residents. So as part of doing this project, the way it's been presented, the way we've been discussing it, is not just bringing the infrastructure to 47 Elm, but bringing it to all the residents in that neighborhood. Providing a project that provides the utilities for all the properties along the way. The things that are driving the discussions are obviously money related, right? The cost of the project and then the cost recovery. How do we recover the costs? To the issue of the capital cost of construction, one thing that we have done is we have moved forward with the public bid process. We are going to have a bid opening for the project before town meeting. So we will have contractors' bids in hands with the cost of the project to lend us to a better comfort level with the numbers. Some of the feedback has been people are concerned that the costs are going to escalate as we go. So we'll have a much better idea if we have actual prices coming in. And then the other piece, so that's how much does it cost and then how do we recover it. So we've talked about this. Obviously well, first let's talk about the water work. So the intent for all the costs of the water work is to be covered through the water rates. Majority of the town is on water. There's a large user base. It's not a new utility, it's an improvement. There's a water main out there already. It needs to be improved. It definitely needs to be improved to provide for 47 Elm, for the pressures that are needed there, the water service that will be needed there. At some point, it needs to be replaced either way. It's on a list that water main does need to be done. Then you have the grant monies. So for the sewer costs, you have the grant monies that'll take a chunk of that, and then we've been talking, and the way we have it presented is with benefits. The rest of the cost is to be assessed through betterments. That's very typical on how, most communities do it. That is how it's been done in Norton before. And the way we have the betterment set up, so you think about it, so you have the cost of the sewer project, you take the grant monies off, what's left, and then you divide that among all the properties that have direct access to the sewer. So we provided access to the sewer for all of these properties, and you divide it up among them. The big thing that we've done here is the way the betterments units get assessed, it's based on equivalent dwelling units. So a single family home is 1 unit. We've looked at 47 Elm Street, based on conceptual plans that have been provided for its best and highest use with the utility available to it. We've identified what the betterment assessment would be, and we're attaching that to this property, which means 70% of what's being paid through betterments is attached to the number of EDUs that would go to 47 Elm Street. It's being attached to that property. The other 30% is being paid by the residents. The residents that now have access to the sewer. One thing, so we've had many meetings. We've had several public meetings with the residents. Many things have come up. We'll talk about all those issues that have come up. One of the big issues that came up and has come to us in emails and was a big discussion at the last public meeting, we're quoting a betterment range with a high end of 12,000 per unit. We're saying that's kind of the high end. And the concern that's come from the residents is they're afraid that that's going to slide in the other direction. They're going to get hit with something much more than 12,000. They're worried that we're not going to assess all those EDUs to 47 Elm, or nobody's going to come and build 47 Elm, and the town's going to turn around and up their betterments to cover the costs. So one thing that we are definitely recommending, if we go forward with the article as written now, is to put because there is not language in there that protects the high end, is to put language in that makes it clear that the betterment is capped at 12,000. Whatever happens, we've got to stick to what we're assessing to 47 Elm Street. If they come back with something that's a lesser use and not as many EDUs as we're projecting, we got to stick with what we assess that property for, which you can do, but that's just, so that's what putting a cap on the betterment. And I wouldn't, we discussed it, and we would highly recommend, at a minimum, the article the way it's written, to do that. And I think there's a lot of people that will ask you for that if you don't do it. It will come up. That's definitely something. That's one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've received. So the other issue, so that's a cost. So we've talked before at length about the betterments. So let's say it is the high end, it's the 12,000. They can pay it up front, a portion over time. We can talk more about that if people have more questions about that. So then the other issue that keeps coming up is the tie-in and the requirement to tie in. So it's all tied to the future operation and maintenance costs of that system. I talked about the water system. You have a large user base. A lot of people share in the cost of the overall water system. It's the opposite with the sewer system. Most people in Norton are not on sewer. And the way that sewer works, sewer enterprise fund, it's quite frankly the people that, they add up their operation and maintenance costs to maintain the system that they have, and they divide it among the users. If we're going to add more infrastructure and not have people tie in, you're just adding to the costs of the people that are already on the system. And I've said this before, it's a multi-million-dollar utility. It's not a build it in case you need it. You need to decide that you want it, and you're building it because you need it and you're going to use it. And that's why the town has a bylaw. The town has a bylaw. That's not a Water and Sewer Commission reg, that's a town bylaw that people have to tie in within 7 years. So it's another thing that the homeowners have to deal with. So they have to pay the betterment, and then they do have to tie into the sewer within 7 years. So there've been discussions about that, and we can come back. I guess where I want to go now is the alternative. So the concern here is that those issues are driving the vote, and the town, you know, the majority of the town feels that's not fair, and we don't want to do that. We don't have to bring sewer to everybody, right? We never envisioned it as a project where we wouldn't bring the infrastructure to everybody. But the alternative, if you go to the next slide, would be to do the water main over the entire length. Because you have to, right? To bring the water pressure to anybody, specifically to that property, it needs the entire length of the pipe to be upgraded. And then you put the pump, you take the pump station, instead of putting it down on the low point on Elm Street and picking everybody up, we can just service 47 Elm. We can put the pump station at 47 Elm Street and run a dedicated force main from that pump station to the same place it's set up to pump now. So it'll come down Elm Street, across 123 and out to Pine Street and tie into the sewers over there. And it's not a sewer that people can tie into. So that would be no gravity sewer and no properties connected other than 47 Elm. So if you go to the next slide, you know, what does that mean? So I kind of did side by side. So we're calling the gravity and force main, we've labeled that as a preferred. That is what the town meeting article is. That's what we put forward as we think is the best for everybody. And then the one to the right is the alternative with just a force main, forget the gravity sewers. So under the preferred option, each property on Elm Street and Miller Terrace is fronted by a gravity sewer. Sorry. The other option is no gravity sewer, no connections. Property value is a thing. I mean, that is the availability of sewer does provide an increase to the property value with sewer availability. That's where the word betterment is derived from. That's why they call it a betterment, because there is an improvement. Under the force main only, there's just no impact to the property value associated with sewers. As far as costs, under the first option, as discussed, homeowners would pay a betterment fee now and a cost to connect within 7 years. They would have to pay to hire somebody to connect into the sewer. Under the alternative, they would have to pay to replace their septic system at some point in the future. We don't know when that will be. We do know they don't last forever. That would be the alternative. As far as construction, under either alternative, you know, the entire road is going to get dug up. We're going to put water main over the entire length, and then on one option, we'll also put the gravity sewer in. Under the other option, we'll just put force main. So we're still going to, you know, dig up the entire road and do all this. I guess the point with this is, you know, and I think we have to go back to the discussion about 47 Elm, because if people don't think it's a good idea to provide this infrastructure for 47 Elm, then we've wasted a lot of time. So we're trying to find a project that is going to have the support it needs, utilize that grant monies to do what needs to be done to improve 47 Elm. We feel that, I mean, obviously we think the better option is to sue everybody while you're there. I'm just trying to be very careful not to speak for I mean, that's how other people feel. It's the will of the people, how the residents feel, and I don't know how you know, is that a decision for the whole town to just decide? Is that a decision for the residents of Elm to decide? That's kind of that's what that leaves us with. So that's what I have on that. I don't know if we want to, so Paul's going to talk about 47 Elm. I don't know if you want to do that and then have discussions about everything. Do it that way?
Yeah, let's have Paul come up and talk about that, because that's a big part of it. If you want to.
He's dying.
We may be getting this on Zoom. We just do a quick check, and if it's not, I will go through my. Anyway, it's not up there yet. Charlene says it's coming, but Good evening, Board. I'm Paul Giuseppe. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development. And I just want to follow up with what Steve was saying. And part of my job is to focus on economic development. And as Steve mentioned, this project, this proposal is driven extensively by the economic development opportunities at 47 Elm Street. And so I want to first start just by talking, or focus primarily on why. Why is redeveloping this site so important to the town? And there's a couple main considerations. First and foremost, get rid of the blight. We want to help, improve the neighborhood, remove a safety issue that's there. And so we believe that adding sewer to this site will greatly increase the marketability of this site and hopefully get it developed at some point. Another factor is financial, and specifically commercial property taxes. As you may recall, a couple years ago, we had a developer propose who said that they were looking to take over the site. They're still looking. Sorry, that's just popped up. And so the numbers I'm going to throw out there were based on what she had spoken about at the planning board and at town meeting, which was specifically about 140 units of residential and about 10,000 square feet of retail. We have no plans to that effect. At this point, that development team has not taken ownership. This is just strictly hypothetical based on that number. But we were looking at what a project of that size could potentially mean to the town in terms of property taxes. And looking at a couple other similar projects, we'd be looking at a ballpark of about $500,000 to $600,000 a year, roughly, back of envelope, which is a pretty big earner for the town. This is important in the context of a few things. One of which is the town, as you know, has a goal of having at least 25% of all of its property taxes coming from commercial. And that's a minimum. We're currently at 18. We've been rising. 5 years ago, I think we were about 15%, but now we're at 18. But we want to keep moving. We need to get to 25. This is one of the few remaining big tax earners potentially. And I'm going to show you a slide later on that shows what's left in terms of our vacant land. But the reality is we don't have much vacant land left. We've seen most of it, vacant land that's zoned for commercial or industrial use. Sorry, now I'm getting access. There's also some limited redevelopment opportunities, particularly Tweeve, but please note that that site's being looked at by a nonprofit. They've been looked at for a few years, and while that will be a great user, the challenge to us is if it's a nonprofit, we cannot tax it. Let me just quickly add this to Zoom. And so what I'm trying to paint a picture is that we have some limited opportunities for redevelopment of vacant land, and this is an important one. The other thing too is adding this would help with the debt service to the Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton wastewater treatment plant, because it could spread the cost to more users. And so if you look on your next slide, there's a map of the town, and you see the parcels that are colored in red. Those are the vacant parcels remaining that are in commercial or industrial land. The two where I have circles are two larger sites that are served by sewer. The other sites aren't served by sewer. One of those sites is the DOT property just north of 495 on 123 across from Blue Star Business Park. It's about 40 acres. It was rezoned about 2 years ago to industrial. DOT was gung-ho for us to rezone it. We did at town meeting, but since then they haven't moved on putting that out to bid. We keep asking for our legislative delegates who have been helping, but DOT at this point is not expressing any interest to put it on the market yet. The other big parcel that we'll also be talking about our presentation on another article, is the property owned by, right near TPC, which is the PGA Gulf Charities, which also is on sewer. At this point, the property owner is not indicating any interest in developing anything there. So, but then the rest of the sites have development opportunities, but they also have environmental constraints. So they'll still be revenue positive, but they're not gonna be, bigger taxpayers. But, if they develop as commercial or industrial, you don't have those added costs that you can get with residential. I'm on the next slide now, talking about, well, we're focusing on Reed and Barton. Part of my job as I've come back is trying to focus and working with Frank and Steve and some other departments of how can we, further our particularly sewer investments in town to help promote economic development. Most of our town does not have sewer, and the great majority, both of our two main roads, 123 and 140, do not have sewer on them. And so we're working to come up with a strategy to figure out how we can continue to extend sewer down 120, along 123 and on 140, with the hopes that we can get redevelopment, because this isn't 10 years ago when we had a lot more vacant land. We're forget who says God isn't making any more land, and there's just not many vacant opportunities anymore. So we want to look at those main corridors, and you can look at the sewer on West Main Street as an example of things that are happening. We've already seen some changes there. We're seeing now the old town library now which was closed for 33 years. I don't want Peter to correct me again. 33 years, 1991. 91. But it reopened because we extended sewer to it. We also rezoned it, but that was also because of sewer. The same developer, you might notice across the street where the old bank was, is now, we haven't received any proposal for it, but the fact that that building is gone is an indicator something's coming back. But again, that's because of sewer. And Bog Iron Brewing, it was very clear they were going to leave that site because they wanted to expand and they couldn't with the septic system. And when we put sewer in, they've been able to expand and they stayed there. And that's been such a great plus for our town. So I'm only bringing this up because with Elm Street, I think if we have a successful project there's putting sewer there, that gives us momentum to go elsewhere into these areas. And we're going to continue to work to find new tools. There's tools out there that the state has for us that we need to take advantage of. Again, on these major corridors. But again, if we're able to have success with Elm Street, that helps us move forward. And then finally, the last slide I have is on the MassWorks grant itself. It's $3.5 million. And as Steve mentioned, it was approved primarily due to the redevelopment of the site. If we don't pass the vote, that $3.5 million gets returned. And I'm speculating here, but it's unlikely we'll see it again for a long, long time for a couple of reasons. One, state funding issues are right now a challenge. And I would also be concerned if we were to return that amount of money, which they told us was actually one of the largest amounts they've ever allocated. They might not look too favorably on us if we do that. And as Steve mentioned, this covers about 41% of the total cost of the project. And our request at town meeting, I know Steve may cover this a little bit more. The full amount is the $8+ million, but what we're really looking for is the balance, which is about $2.5 million. If we were to, so essentially we're asking for $2.5 million to get that $3.5 million grant, which is a return on investment of about 40%, which is a really good return on investment. And if this site, if the site were built and it was built something along the lines of what that developer had talked about, again, a lot of ifs and buts and all that. But if we were making between 500,000 and 600,000 a year in property taxes, you divide that by the 2.5 million we're asking for, the site pays that back, within about 4 to 5 years. Of course, it doesn't go back to pay the debt on the sewer, but it comes back to the town and overall property taxes. So this would be a true investment. So I just posed the question, can we afford to lose that 3.5 million? With that, I'll turn it back over to Steve.
I think that really basically covers it. I mean, the end slides are just, really just comes down to the, next steps. I mean, town meeting is driving everything. Are we gonna go forward? Don't already know. So that's kind of where we're at. There's a slide about why we're gonna think we've covered all that stuff. Public outreach. We've had a lot of meetings. We're trying to do our best to get the information out there. I've presented it many times. I think at this point, we just, I guess that's it. We're looking to see where the board stands and what kind of questions you have in order to inform your discussion.
All right, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Paul, as well. I know the board is gonna have questions. I had a couple myself. When the costs increase for this project, which, I'm not gonna say if, I'm gonna say when, capping the betterment, that just means the town's gonna pay, correct? For any increase.
Yep.
And believe it or not, that developer that Paul mentioned I think that was my last planning board meeting before I ran for select board, and I'm up for re-election next year. So it's been 3 years, I still haven't pulled the trigger on anything. I think I said at that meeting, it's forever ago, that I'm not a fan of doing anything to please a certain developer.
Right.
But it sounded like a great idea, but this far along 3 years later, with no commitment whatsoever, that concerns me quite a bit.
Well, I think they're waiting for us to make a decision on what we're going to do with it. And I guess one point I would make to that is, a number of people have said, well, we want a commitment from a developer on this. And I'm not going to try to change anyone's mind, but I would just say that as I've looked at it, it's what can we do to make this site more marketable, whether it's DevCo or somebody else. We get the sewer there, we're increasing the chance of something happening at that site. I would just caution about tying it to one, because we've heard from a couple other developers. It doesn't mean that will happen, but they're not the only developer out there.
And that's a tricky spot too, because they have to clean up the environmental impacts from the previous landowner. So that's why, that is a lot of my hesitation as well. And I'm sure, I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, I'm sure you can speak for yourselves. My other question, is we're looking for, 2.4 or something, or 2.6 million at town meeting? Right,
We have to appropriate the full amount.
right, okay.
The 8.6 is what's on the article right now. But when you break it down as to how it's being recovered, 2.5 million, based on the estimates we have now, is what's being assessed as betterments.
Okay, that answers the question. Okay, anyone on the board have questions?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so you said another alternative, a dedicated force main, just for 47 Cross,
Correct.
and that would be paid for by,
So the entire remaining assessment would be the 47. So the price of the gravity sewer is somewhere in the $2 to $2.5 million range. So that's going to come off the cost of the project. It's going to be cheaper to not put in the gravity sewer.
so,
It fronts everybody. We're definitely saving money. So the appropriation number would come down. But yes, so now the betterment, the only property that's bettered is 47.
47 Cross. Now, did you just say that the cost of that would be, would you say roughly 2.5 million for a dedicated force main?
No, the gravity sewer that we're taking out. So the whole project is, if we build it the way we're proposing it, is 8.6 million. If we take,
I'm asking you about the dedicated force
right, so
main.
how much is that piece of
How
it?
much would that, did you guys get a price on that?
I do, I don't remember. So there's a price in the full, so the force main's a little longer if we come up to 47 Elm as opposed to being down at Library Park where it's proposed.
Mhm.
But the force main itself is, I think it's like $1.5 million to $2 million of the project cost.
Now that MassWorks grant of the 3.5, will that still be able to be applied?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I can just tack on to that, the remaining share that, if all works out just like this, like you presented, 2.5 million is what the town would need to come up with to borrow.
Larger
To
project,
borrow. So if you remove that sewer portion, we won't have to do that 2.5 million.
In theory. That's how.
Anything else, Al?
No, I mean, I think the betterment overall, you know, some of the excuse me, the dynamics of it being, you know, the chicken or the egg. You know, we have the property that's a brownfield site. No developer is gonna wanna put anything into it without it being some sort of surety that they'll be able to do what they need to do with it. And as it sits right now, it's a huge liability. Our liability, the town's liability. The overall betterment, as proposed, I think, is a lot better long-term. I just wanted to get the metrics of what you said, the dedicated force main, that possible option, what that approximate cost would be for 47 Elm, and whether that MassWorks grant would be able to be applied
So I
to.
gave you the force main cost, I didn't give you the pumps. You asked for, so there's also, the pump station is another $1.5 million too.
So the
Yeah.
project cost for that force main to 47 Elm.
It has a pump station and a force main, so.
What's
the total
cost?
So if the total cost we're looking for is 8.6, if we remove the sewer portion, what's the total cost?
Around 6 to 6.5.
Okay. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. I apologize if I
No,
wasn't clear and.
I got a lot of numbers running around my head.
I'm looking, when I ask for a total, I'm looking for, you know, the total.
I
What's-
took it too literal, yeah, I took it
Yeah.
too literal. That's why I
And that's
corrected
my
myself.
fault.
I figured out what you were saying and I corrected it.
But that MassWorks grant would still be
Yes.
able to
The
be applied
MassWorks
to.
grant is tied to housing and jobs. So they're looking at that parcel as
Okay.
as economic development. That's what the money is for.
Okay. And again, we can't, you know, the current interested party isn't interested in a letter of intent or anything of that nature to provide us any kind of impetus to move this
We've
on.
asked a few times, and we can certainly continue to ask for some commitment.
Do you see,
For me, I mean, a letter of intent would, in my opinion, go a long way, I think. But again, that's just my individual opinion.
do they have any money into this at all so far? For anything? Pre-engineering, anything?
That we don't know. All I'm aware of is they've been looking at how to take ownership of the property through the bankruptcy courts, but have they done their studies? There was discussion we had with them a couple of years ago that they would have to go through it, but we haven't seen anything.
Yeah, from what I recall, they showed us that they didn't do the engineering reports or anything. They just showed us kind of basically what it could potentially be.
Hmm.
So it was, and that was 3 years ago. So I don't know if they've done anything since then.
I mean, I'd just like to see a little more dedication to the site, whether, you know, skin in the game per se, whether it be money or something in writing, but I know, you know, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place with it. That's okay.
Anyone else? Denise, I think you were next.
Yeah, I think, Alec, actually, you asked the exact questions that I had, was the price difference between the two options, and if the grant was applicable in both options. And I would say that, sorry. I would say that the development of that land, whether it be the current interested party or somebody else, I think is crucial. We don't, as a town, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are not currently liable for that property because we do not have possession of that property in the town, and that's for good reason, right? We don't want to have possession of the property because it's an environmental risk, right? So if somebody can come in and clean that up, it's good for the town for a lot of reasons. But if we can do it in the most efficient way possible, that's good for a lot of reasons too, right?
Mr. Chair. So just want to be clear that the town is going to take this whole burden on, including the 70% for 47 Elm, until somebody decides to come in and develop that land.
Yes.
So if nobody
So we own
develops
that
it,
property.
we're going to be responsible for the entire cost of the project.
The remaining costs. So, yeah, after the grant money, yep, yes, the entire remaining costs.
So this 70% is based on if we get somebody with this EDU factor that you have for that property. And you think it's going to take 2 years or so to fulfill this project?
It's a one-year time frame from when we award every year to build the sewer and water improvements.
So we could be back here again next year saying, hey, we need another 1.75 million to cover the rest of this cost because nobody is developing that project. We're going to have to cover this whole cost up front and hope to recoup that from somebody who develops that project. So my question is that wouldn't that give us more ability to determine how much of the sewer they're gonna pay if there's somebody else besides whoever was saying comes in to develop that now? Where does this number come from, I guess, is how do you determine the number of EDUs per, and what the,
Yeah, it's tied to projected usage of the property, how much water usage is going to be, right? And it equates each EDU is what a typical single-family home would use. So,
and if you're going out to bid on this, you're going out to bid sometime in the next couple of weeks, and you'll have that number. If that number comes in, substantially higher or lower, will that change the price of the town's portion, or will that change? Who would benefit if the price goes down, and who would?
I mean, it affects everybody. It affects everybody,
And so
based on what that price is.
right, and I'm guessing, where did we come up with this cost to begin with, and how long ago was that determined? And if that was 2 years ago, it would seem to me that if we're going out to bid 2 years after these numbers were put together, or when did you put these numbers together?
We just did an estimate. We've been updating the estimate.
Okay, because these are, back in spring, these are the same numbers we had.
Yeah, the spring, yeah, it hasn't changed.
Okay, so that was 6 months ago, and so I'm assuming that the price has probably not gone down since then.
Probably not. That's why we're going to have bids in hand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else from the board before I open it up? No? Okay. We can take questions from the audience. You come up to the podium. Just make sure you say your name and address and direct all your questions to the chair, and we'll go from there.
Hi, Debbie Winston, Elm Street. Although I appreciate the work that the planning board has done, and I do understand how important 47 Elm Street is and the funds that it will bring in, my question is, where was the thinking on putting the burden on the residents? I keep hearing that sewer improves a home. That is not true. I've talked to realtors, our representative, the state representative's daughter's a realtor, and other realtors in town. What betters a home is location, condition, and value. So stop trying to throw that smoke up the residents' tuchuses, okay? Number one. Number two, If it is so important to the town, why isn't the town taking it on and just focusing on 47? I understand that you want sewer in the whole town, but do you not understand that if we connect to sewer, you increase our water bills, double or triple, and you cannot decide if you water your lawn, your pool, and everything else. So you are asking those residents to eat it in multiple ways. With the tie-in, with the sewer, and increased water bill. So if it's so important that this be developed, why is that Plan A forcing it upon the residents rather than the town cleaning up the site and putting sewer there? And you are assessing, I was at the other meeting, whoever develops that 1.7 million, so that when it gets sold, the town gets that 1.7 million, but nothing comes back to us. And we, Elm Street is the guinea pig, citizens of Norton, for all of you. So I have a direct question, Chairman, to Paul. What was his thinking there, if it's so important to develop? Because I do agree with your idea, but how you've done it is beyond incredible to me. And you've been in the planning board too, with the overlay MBTA. We need 750 units, not 1,700. When are our leaders going to have our citizens' backs? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deb. All right, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna speak for Paul, but I know it's not just Paul, there's been a lot of people involved in this, put a lot of time and effort in, so. Anybody's welcome to respond, but I'm not sure. I know.
I think the information has been provided.
Okay. All right, does anyone else have a question?
Is he gonna answer?
Come on up.
What should I call
Val, we missed you last week.
I'm sorry. Everything's been so busy. Val Cabral, 50 Mansfield Avenue. I have a question for you, Chair, about this project, and this is just because of what we went through on my street at one point, where we thought we were gonna have a similar situation where they were talking about bringing the sewer in. That 7-year tie-in piece, is there, I think there were like particular exceptions you could maybe get based on certain circumstances. Are those things that are still applicable for any of the folks who are concerned about this? Because I've listened through some of the meetings and I just don't know if I missed that at some point. I think that's to Paul through you, but I'm not sure.
I can kind of answer it, and you can help me if I'm wrong. I know, and Mike can help me too. I asked the same exact question, probably 6 months ago. And it's not, officially we have to say yes, but there are always extenuating circumstances.
Okay, so it's
So
like,
I can't officially say you can take longer.
right. But
But
it's
that is a
potentially
possibility.
if there was something really exciting. Yeah, I knew there were like things in the state about that one. Thank you. I was just curious that like.
Don't take that as it.
Yes, no.
As the word of God here.
No,
so.
no, no.
All right. Am I correct, Paul? Mike? Okay.
It's a town bylaw enforced by the Board of Health. And I'm sure if they needed to, they'd give someone a lot of leeway.
Yeah, I'm sure if it's a matter of tying in or losing your home, I don't think they're gonna
Yeah.
force any. I would hope not. Or this is a town I wouldn't want to live in. Okay. Anyone else have a question? Come on up. I know you.
Jim Shedd at 56 Mansfield Ave. Just a quick question. Just to be sure on the numbers, it was 8.6 million total,
Yep.
and that includes the water main.
Yes.
For the gravity sewer, yes.
Okay, and then just the force main pump station for 47 Elm was 6.5?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it said we're taking the sewer out, we'll take out 2.5.
Okay, so just wanted to clarify, and the water main was 2? 2.4. So where were we now, 6.5?
6.5, yeah.
6.5 without the gravity main. Deduct the water main, 4.5. Grant is 3.5. So the town's investment would be 1 million if we did that. Is that,
Yes.
okay.
But that map works.
I don't have an opinion one way or the other, I just wanted to clarify, because I wasn't sure, and when I hear a lot of numbers and there's gray areas, I just wanted to
But I
know.
believe, in the slides here, 2.4 was coming from water rates, so the remaining share would be the 2.5 from the town.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they work it at that
On the
point.
whole project, but on the, just
Yeah.
the dedicated main, it would be 1 million from the town, total.
Unless it's coming from the water rates, which I would recommend, but I think they would have to rework that.
No, he did the math right. I mean, the way he just ran it.
No, he's
Yeah.
asking Frank to pay for it.
I saw you shaking your head, that's why I said, yeah, maybe think about it.
And if I could, just a quick clarification for Val's benefit, the project by us was a private main. And there's a difference between a private main and a municipally funded main, and I think in the case of a private main, it's a little more lenient as far as if the cost exceeds repairing your septic, you can get a variance to repair your septic. It's not the case in a municipally installed main, that variance isn't available. And I think I got that right. If I got it wrong, somebody correct me.
Yeah, there's nothing official, but, okay, anyone else? You're making my job easy tonight, thank you. All right, what do we think, folks?
Personally, I think the force main in this particular instance, in this location, makes the most sense.
So I think we need to vote on recommending this to town meeting or not.
But the article right now has 8.6. That's going to change if we.
Someone would have to modify it.
Right.
Yeah, so what we can do, I mean, we can either recommend or not recommend as is, and then it would change the town meeting. I mean, we're
Gotcha.
not gonna, our vote tonight doesn't take it off the town meeting or put it on. It's
I didn't
just-
realize it was too late to modify it before it gets to the warrant. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and if, I
Understood.
mean, if there's anything significant, we can revisit it next week, but I don't see that happening.
Okay.
So if anyone would like to make a motion.
Oh, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I recommend that we recommend Article number 13 for town meeting, for the Elm Street water and sewer improvements.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to recommend the Town Street Water and Sewer Extension improvements.
Just clarification, for a dedicated force main or as presented?
It should be as presented.
As presented.
As
somebody.
presented.
Yeah. Hopefully, somebody out there will want to modify it at the town meeting.
I'm sure somebody will. Okay,
And that's well within the realm of
Yeah.
the scope. Someone can absolutely recommend that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Before we vote, Mr. Chair, I'd like, if we have some time for discussion.
absolutely, use the mic.
So the reason I'm recommending this article is so that everybody in the town gets to have a say in it, so that if we recommend this, it'll go to town meeting.
No, I had said before, whether we recommend it or not, it's more than likely gonna go to town meeting, whether it's moved by FinCom or by the water department. So our vote tonight, is whether we as a board recommend it, but it's still gonna go to town meeting.
Got it.
Yeah.
I believe, I think they're gonna move it no matter what. Right?
No.
So it's not like our
Got it.
previous vote we had to put something on a ballot, whether it was up to us, yes or no, that the people get the choice. The people are still gonna have a choice.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Me? Okay, 3-1, it passes, or it's endorsed. So the next one we have that has a presentation is
That was number 13.
yeah, that was number 13, so now we have number 17, the zoning bylaw amendment. Okay, this is for the MBTA issue.
Chair, I'd like to announce that Planning Board Chair Tim Griffin is on, who is going to lead the discussion.
So here's the thing, I don't think we have the
I heard
ability
her voice.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If he
Kind of.
put your microphone close.
My microphone's right on my headset, so,
He's talking to Paul right now.
Okay.
Say that again, Tim?
It's
I can
coming
just
from the
keep
left.
talking. If you don't feel the audio is sufficient, then, Paul is certainly capable to lead otherwise.
Jason, do we have a mic on that? Do we know?
It might feedback if we do that.
Yeah, okay.
Or
I can hear it. If the board can hear it, I'm okay with it.
Can everybody hear me?
I can hear.
I can hear you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
No.
No.
They have the handout.
They have the handout? Okay. Well, for anybody who's watching online or can see this
Yeah, it is. It's in your back.
elsewhere, I'm just gonna give a presentation here, Chair, if that's fine.
Absolutely, Tim.
I'll be able to answer any questions at the end. If you have questions, just feel free to interrupt, but I think I've done this enough times where I think it makes sense to go through the whole thing, so. Okay? So, again, this is the Great Woods Overlay District, which is intended to comply with Mass General Law 40A, Section 3. So, I'll skip the agenda here and dive right into the timeline. This is a process that the planning board has been looking at for a while. The state initially adopted this MBTA Communities Law in January of 2021. Norton was designated as an adjacent community according to the bylaw. Meaning we don't have a transit station, we are adjacent to those that do. We received final guidelines in August of 2023, and we began working with SERPED the following month to select proposed zoning districts to comply. Over the intervening 7 months, we worked on this, and in April selected a northern section of Mansfield Avenue through a site selection process, which I'll get into in a minute. In the time between then and now, we have worked with SERPED to develop the bylaw to accompany the district, and that it brings us to where we are today. So again, Norton qualifies as an MBTA adjacent community. The regulation requires one zoning district allowing multifamily as of right, meaning it's not subject to a special permit, it can only be subject to a site plan review. The district must be at least 15 units per acre, and it must be at least 50 acres in size, and it cannot be subject to age restrictions. It can't be targeted as a retirement area or anything like that. So 15 times 500, you get Norton's target of 750 units on paper. I'll dive into what that number actually means in a further slide. So just to speak to the law itself, the law does not require the town to provide the land or produce the housing. It can't force the owners to sell the land to anyone or do anything with it. Doesn't require the town to provide or pay for any infrastructure, doesn't require specific building types, and there's no requirement to develop at all. It only provides the opportunity to develop or replace existing uses and structures over time. This is intended to be a long bylaw, a overlay district that over time promotes the growth of multifamily in areas across the Commonwealth. About half of the municipalities in the state are required to comply. So it's not something that will be developed all at once. It may only be partially developed or may never be developed at all. So how an overlay district works, for those who don't spend as much time with zoning as any of us, an overlay goes on top of the base zoning for individual parcels. A property owner can build either under the base zoning or the overlay, their choice. So again, what is the purpose of the overlay district? First and foremost, it is required to meet the requirements of the state law. Encouraging smaller housing typologies, providing more affordable housing and encouraging development are all things that that the planning board looks at. But the driving force behind this law, and I've said this repeatedly over the last several meetings that I've had, we would not be touching this bylaw or anything equating to it if it was not a state requirement. Plain and simple. This is a state requirement that we're being asked to comply with. The state also has specific site selection guidelines. We need to consider how much is on sensitive land, which would make it challenging or inadvisable to construct housing, and it should generally encourage development of housing compatible with existing surrounding uses and minimize impacts to sensitive lands. So the site selection process that we did with Serped, we looked at the town and looked at all of these different factors around. Different features have either a push impact, meaning if there's something close to here that should push development away, or a pull, if something is close to this, then it could potentially pull development and have a positive impact. So we looked at all of this stuff, and I'm going to skim through a few slides here really quick. The process that Serped did was divide the town into 10-acre grids, and then ranked each grid based on each of those factors over a series of maps. So this is all those climate resilience factors. Lighter is better in this case. Water resources, lighter is better again. The darker would be where there are aquifers, etc. Quality of life, so schools, libraries, etc. Priority areas for development that are noted by the town. Infrastructure, sewer, roads, etc. And overall, so you can see when all of that is blended together, you see a few areas in dark red, meaning they are generally not viewed as suitable for this kind of a project, and some areas in darker green along 123 towards Attleboro, 123 towards the center, a little bit south on 140, and a little bit north on 140. These are the parcels that the board ended up looking at and noticing as part of this bylaw. I'll note that in our last session, we did make a motion to remove a couple of parcels from this list in what we were considering after our last meeting. And Paul, I'll ask you just to give an update at the end of this with what we're looking to do at our next meeting on the 8th to finalize our selection of the map. So at this hearing tonight, we don't have, I don't think, the final map approved by the planning board for you to look at, but I think we're most of the way there. And we also have the full language for you to decide if you'd like to submit that to town meeting as well. But these parcels include, essentially you have a large parcel in front of the TPC golf course, which is owned by PGA Charities. And then there are a number of existing multifamily properties on the opposite side of 140, which are part of this. And those are the parcels that we selected. Why did we choose this? One, the area already includes existing multifamily properties and uses that make sense near multifamily developments, and it's served by water and sewer. Norton Center was an area that Serped had highlighted as having a good mix of qualities. The planning board decided to eliminate that due to concerns on traffic and congestion, as well as issues with the village center core zoning. The Route 123 locations were considered. We ended up eliminating them due to some limitations of infrastructure and other factors, and also the fact that it would require us to permit 15 units per acre in an area that was predominantly dominated by a lot of single-family properties and neighbors. I may not know everything, but I do know that single-family homeowners generally do not like a whole bunch of multifamily properties going in next door. The board specifically chose to exclude the Roach Brothers Plaza area and maintain and encourage commercial and retail activity in that area. And we chose to include the existing multifamily properties across 140 because they're contiguous to the PGA parcel. And they're also currently existing non-conforming lots. The area is zoned commercial, and those residential uses are currently non-conforming. So allowing them in this overlay would potentially allow them to expand or do other things that conforming lots can normally do. Ultimately, we think that this location, and I'll go back to the parcels again just for a moment, does kind of fit the best of both worlds in this. We think that it's an area that A, if their development ever happens, makes sense for a multifamily properties. And B, speaking bluntly, I think that this is a site that I don't think, even if, regardless of what would happen, would ever be developed to the full extent of these lots because of its proximity to the golf course. While we've all seen condos near golf courses, the fact that this property currently serves as a buffer for the TPC means that it's very unlikely, in my opinion. You never know what will happen down the line with a property, but I have a hard time believing that this would be a property that somebody would want to fill fully right next to the golf course, or that the current owner, PGA Charities, would allow that to happen. So, diving into the bylaw itself, this is the second article going into the language. Again, it meets the requirements of the law. It's designed to give incentives for both affordable units as well as mixed use properties. So adding commercial uses on the ground floor of a property. The base is a maximum of 3 stories, but there are bonuses available for affordable housing and top of the shop concepts. Again, we want to encourage affordable units because if we're going to put in or allow the idea of additional units to be built, we want to make sure that when it makes sense, we can keep Norton above the 10% affordable threshold to allow us additional flexibility in dealing with any proposed 40B projects. But overall, the dimensional guidelines are designed to support smaller multifamily housing types with smaller lot sizes and frontage requirements, and we're looked to protect adjacent residential uses with a generally large vegetated buffer requirement. So this is the dimensional standards table from the bylaw. One item on note here, unless anybody really wants to get into setback discussions, the maximum units per acre that we've set here is 16. The state's minimum is 15. So we're fairly closely aligned with that. I do want to just note that we did adopt the town master plan in October of 2021. 3 of those provisions right here, which we saw in an earlier slide, are part of the master plan. So we think that we are still aligned with that mission and goal that the town has set up. I talked about the state requiring compliance to this bylaw. They are swinging a big stick in enforcing it. In General Law 40A3, they specified that top list, MouseWorks, HousingWorks, Housing Choice, and the Local Capital Projects Fund as programs that towns that are not in compliance will not be able to access. You can see on the bottom that we have received a number of grants from those programs in the past. The second bullet list, and I know I spoke to the town manager about this at the FinCom meeting earlier this week. The state has essentially decided that towns that are not in compliance with this bylaw, almost any and all discretional funding the state has authority over is in question. So that second list are programs that the state has threatened to take away from other towns. Specifically, Milton is one example for not complying with the bylaw. But the short version is, if you're not in compliance, the state has decided that you're gonna be on the naughty list. And, they're not gonna be very, giving with any of these programs. There is a pending court case with Milton to determine whether the state can actually take away that second list of programs, since they weren't specified in the actual legislation. They were only included in the guidance that the agency issued afterwards. But in any case, even the first 4 programs, including MassWorks, which I believe the grant that you just talked about for sewer is a MassWorks grant, would be an impact to efforts that the town wants to do for grant programs. So there is that pending case, but that will not be settled by town meeting. So from what we have right now, the state is essentially saying anything that we have discretion on is in question if you're not in compliance, period. This bylaw works with a compliance model, which is based on acreage and ties in all of our dimensional standards and a whole bunch of things in a giant Excel spreadsheet. So this is an old version of the chart, and Paul, I guess you can again speak to this. With the lots that we've selected and the bylaws that we laid out, the number of units that we have that are in the chart right now, this chart says 1722. Paul, I think the final number that we have from Serped for the full list of lots is around 1,500.
A little lower.
But again, the final map would be something that the board would determine at our next meeting, based on some additional research done by Serped in the past week. Paul, before I move on, is that number correct from the data that Serped sent over this afternoon?
I think it's a little lower. I think it's around 1,200.
Okay. So 1,200, and if you'll excuse me, I know I need to update the title of this slide. If we need 750 units, why does this overlay allow for more than that? Again, we've chosen the PGA site. We don't necessarily have to use that whole lot when we get to this final number. But we are going to have a safety margin because when the state looks at this, they are looking at gross buildable acres. They're not just looking at acres. So they're going to take out all of the wetlands that are on the site, and a later slide will show that. So we are going to, the board is going to look at a couple of different options. And we're going to try to get as close to what we feel is the lowest number, which will meet the state guidelines when discounting the wetlands and everything else. But I will be open and say to this board, as I said to FinCom, the number that shows up on screen at town meeting is not going to be 750 and 751. So I am going to have this discussion at town meeting again. What is actually going to happen? We're not going to get to 1,700 units in any way, shape, or form. And that's even if the existing owners of the sites of all of these lots wanted to build them up to the maximum, tear down what's already there. A number of these sites are already developed. Even then, there are restrictions on parking, driveways, coverage, setbacks, and everything else that reduce the build-up area available, along with wetlands and other factors. So just to look at the wetlands, this is the approximate wetlands map for the PGA site. We need to essentially discount all of those from our calculations, and when we kind of map out what the state will require when they look at our submitted bylaw and evaluate it for compliance. So just in a summary, the state requirements require compliance by the end of 2024. I will mention that we did, while working with Serped, ask if this was something that we could get for a spring town meeting. The answer was no. Serped was not able to support us via the grant that we were working under that timeline. So we are where we are for fall town meeting. I went through the site selection process of why we chose this site and what we decided to do with it. And again, the requirement is only the opportunity for development. It does not mandate construction, and it doesn't prevent development under the existing zoning if desired. So commercial properties can go there now, commercial properties can go there after. And if multifamily is developed, the requirements are designed to promote properties that we think are well designed and encourage mixed use or retail as well as affordable units. So that's the end. I apologize for going through a total of 27 slides with you. But that's the where we are now. And if there's anything you want me to put back up on the screen, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, I'll shrink it, and unfortunately, my face will be that much bigger in the Zoom meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Tim. I know you've gone through this 600 times so far, so I appreciate you doing it one more. Okay. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. You answered one of them. I'm stuck on the, why are we, well, I have a couple statements. One, I think the state way overreached here, but there's really nothing we can do about that. I'm concerned about giving the potential of 1,500 units. I know it's not 100% feasible, but some of these buildings are going to be 3 to 5 stories tall, so that could actually result in 1,500 units. I am concerned that one of the very few areas we have sewer in town is in this as well. But I will move on to the questions. Okay, that is one. Why did we choose an area with sewer rather than, anything else? So Tim
And
or
this
Paul?
was I'll say this is we tried to find what we felt was the best of both worlds in a site that A, made sense with an area around multifamily properties and met the requirements, and we did that. We knew that it did have sewer. That was, from a multifamily development perspective, that is a positive. We know that we'd love to have commercial property built on that space, but I would think that anybody who thinks the warehouse is gonna go next to the golf course is probably a little bit overly optimistic. I do think there's a scenario here where the action that we take here spurs some sort of development on this lot that has been empty, or a portion of this lot. What we propose as something that maybe is incentivized for affordable units could turn into something that is some high-end retail shops and some high-end golf course condos, and that's it. So we're not trying to keep the commercial zoning away, but this is what the board felt was the best place to put this. I know I've had a lot of comments saying, why did you put it here? I'll say what I said to FinCom. We've been talking about this for more than a year. I have more fingers than I've had members of the public speak at all of our sessions about this combined. So we've been working on this for a while. At this point, as I said to FinCom, these are the lots that were noticed as part of this article. So this is the area that we can talk about at town meeting. There isn't really an ability to say, let's put it somewhere else at town meeting.
Okay, my feedback is, we had just talked about Elm Street and how getting sewer there is essential to developing commercial properties, and, we need to get that percentage of tax income up to 25%. So now we're looking at taking a place where we already have sewer and putting residential in there. So that, I mean, that's my concern, and I'm not putting this on the planning board at all. I know you guys have done quite a bit of work. I've watched almost all your meetings on
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah, and the other part of this is, we looked at where else would we put it? Anywhere else that we thought we would put it, we felt that we would have a whole lot of people who didn't think it fit there. Whether it's an area predominantly single family or something else, that it doesn't make sense for this area, I don't want it over here, I don't want it over here. With all of the noticing that we did for this, I mean, we've talked to the PGA property, we've talked to the other abutters, but we only had one abutter show up to our meetings. It's been quiet.
Yeah.
I think if we proposed this on Hill Street or 123 or Pine Street or somewhere else, I have a feeling that there would be a much bigger crowd for all of these sessions.
Oh, absolutely. So, one of my last questions is, you mentioned in your presentation that we've had grants going back to 2018 of 4.5 million. Is that including the 3.5 for the Elm Street?
Yes.
Okay. So we basically had about $1 million worth of grants without that Elm Street project?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Since
about
2018.
10 different projects.
Grants for 50,000 are so great, so I'm not diminishing that at all. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, and I'll say that the grants and all those programs are step one. The state has also basically said that they will also prosecute.
So that's actually, I had that in my notes because I was on the FinCom meeting on Monday. Who are they gonna prosecute and how?
They'll sue us for not being in compliance.
Well, that's different than prosecuting. I mean,
Okay.
I found that, personally, hold on one second, Tim.
Correct.
Hold on one second,
But
Tim.
it's not just, you get to say, okay, we don't want the grants. There's further action taken by the state against.
I understand that, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't comply, it's a state requirement, I understand that. But when I am at a meeting and I hear, to me, that sounds like a fear tactic, and I'm not a fan of that. And I understand that you're just relaying what you've heard and what you've seen from what you got from Serped. So I'm I'm not blaming you.
I don't like it either.
Tim, hold on one second. Let me finish up, okay? Tim.
Don't like it. We had a member.
Tim, hang on a second, buddy.
I'm going to vote against this
Okay.
because I don't like the state strong arming it.
I don't think you can hear me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. Let me finish up my thought before you jump in, okay?
Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so what I was saying is I am not a fan of fear tactics. I think everybody knows that from the discussions on some other issues in town that we won't bring up. But I do know for one thing, Foxborough, I just talked to some people in Foxborough. They denied this at first. It's going to a town meeting in November. It's gonna be denied again. So we're not gonna be, if this is denied at town meeting, we're not gonna be the only town that's denied this. Again, I want to acknowledge that the planning board, Paul, you guys have all done a tremendous amount of work on this. And I don't want that to be lost in any of the words that I'm saying, but I'm personally against this as written. So hopefully we can come back with a smaller map. And you said the next meeting is on the 8th, right?
Yes, they're meeting next Tuesday. There was a request by a couple of residents at the last planning board meeting to look at that PGA parcel to see, could we split zone it such that we get close to 750? So Serpent's working on that. They provided some materials. It's been given to the board. It's posted up now online. It's in the Dropbox folder for planning board, so that information is up there. So Tuesday, the board will be looking at that information and deciding, are they keeping the proposal, the selected parcels as is? Will they shrink it in some way?
Okay, so however the board wants to go with this tonight, I think we should see that we have a meeting on the 10th, so we should see whatever's changed there. And I gotta say, even if any sewer is involved, personally, I'm a hard no. So that's my opinion. I'll open up to the board if they have any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr.
Do
Rich.
you mind if I just say one more thing, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
So we've worked with Serped in complying with this bylaw through this whole process, through a grant. That grant is essentially done. So if we do try and do this again, we are doing it either on our own or we're paying out of our own pocket.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to, you know, what I was saying before, this is what we got, take it or leave it. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think there are other options, and I think, and again, this is just my personal opinion. If there are other options, and anything with sewer, I'm personally a hard no. So, go ahead, Mr. Rich.
So Paul and Tim, again, thank you for all your work on it. And aside from the strong arm old school Gestapo tactics by the state, was there any consideration given to the trailer park, I think 250 Mansfield Ave, and I think the Roach Brothers Plaza, myself personally, I think that may have been a good parcel as well, because they're clearly not interested in expanding their retail presence. So going up a few stories over there might be what was needed there to breathe some life into that property. Whether they do it or not, that's a different story, but just an option. I don't know. Reaching out to them, I know they've been,
Gator.
yeah, I know they really don't respond, but maybe something like this, I don't know, maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have. The overlay, correct me if I'm reading it, wrong, but this is just a basic overlay in the historical definition of an overlay. The zoning that is currently there. Commercial still can be built there
Yes,
if nobody
Yes.
comes to the table to, okay,
they can still build anything that's allowed under commercial.
okay, thank you. And by my calculations, it looks like that with the 1,200 units, seems like I know you wanted to get some extra coverage to accommodate for the parking and drainage and things of that nature, but it's 40%, or roughly 40% more unit count. Is that too high? Is it too low?
I can speak to that. I don't want to cut you off though. Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
respond to that just specifically?
Oh, go ahead, through the chair, whatever.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
So the additional units, anything over 750, that is nothing to do with setbacks and drainage and everything else. The only numbers that are gonna be going over 750 are essentially ones that we think we need to take out because the state won't count the wetlands in the numbers.
Okay.
Period.
Understood, and I get it. I know that the area, doing smaller developments, but still same types of compliance issues with, parking and impervious surface and drainage issues and everything else. So that is, I know that the first number of 1,700 and change, that was, I think, a little knock it out of the park one, well over and above, but dialed back to the 1,200, I think that a 40% bigger might be more accurate to accommodate for that other open space that's required.
And also, when we had the 1,700, we were including the new 40B next to McDonald's and the one lot in between the multifamilies and the 40B. So they were already developed lots. So in actual properties that might get built under this, there's no difference. The only difference is the numbers on paper.
So to tack onto that, so why include it if they're already built?
The state allows you to.
Well, no, I know
We
that.
had it in the initial, in the initial map, we decided to take them out because we didn't feel it was needed. So we did.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Reed.
So just, I want to clarify that what you just said, Tim. The existing apartment building that was just built next to, adjacent to Roach Brothers, that's included in this?
It was included in the initial map that we noticed.
Mm-hmm.
In our most recent meeting, we decided to remove that from what we would potentially propose in the end.
Why would you do that, Tim?
To lower the number on paper.
And we found through our consultant that the state has said do not put this over 40 Bs. Apparently a lot of communities are trying to do that, and the state has said you cannot do that.
So the trail parks, we weren't able to utilize in our 40B count calculation.
I don't believe they're part of the subsidized housing inventory.
That's what I mean, they weren't allowed to be utilized.
Correct, as far as the achieving 10%, I don't think they
I don't think they were, no.
So,
So that leads to
excuse
my
me.
question, why wouldn't we include that? You know, what was the reason for not including that trailer park in this? That's a big parcel.
We actually
We
looked at
discussed it, we discussed that whole area. Looking at the area, we saw the existing multifamily properties on, I'll call it the right side of 140, because I'm terrible with compass directions. And then saw the PGA parcel and went, we think this makes sense, let's move forward. We knew we wouldn't need it to meet the numbers. And also bluntly, we thought that if we did include it, we would potentially get a lot more resident opposition.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Paul.
Mr. Chair,
We'll just keep going down the line. Okay. Mr. Marcian.
I do have a couple of questions. I don't know if we just have a difference in concepts of this whole proposal by the state to weigh down on all of the communities in town. Different philosophy as opposed to compliance as opposed to what's best for the town. And if we're able, we say that we didn't want to put it on top of the housing behind the McDonald's, but we do want to put it on other housing. I don't understand what the concept is there. And if you're saying it's because it's already developed, why wouldn't we have put the whole overlay on top of a place that's already developed?
Exactly.
Like a trailer park?
Yeah.
Mobile home park. Mobile home park.
That's a great question. Why did the
Hold on,
planning
what-
board once again dig in?
All right, let's, well, I'll
Mr.
have
Chair, would you
questions
like me to
out.
respond?
Yeah, go ahead, Tim, that's what I was stumbling for.
Sure. So to the point about the 40B, as the planner has mentioned, the state does not want 40Bs included. We initially included it, so it was part of the lot, one of the lots that we originally noticed. It has been removed. The state does allow the overlay to be cited over properties that are developed. Looking at this area in particular, the existing multifamilies on their own, plus even if we included New England ice cream, we are short of the required area, which would mean if we wanted to do it here and have it be contiguous, the entire zone does not need to be contiguous. We knew we needed to add an additional lot, and the PGA property is the one that we looked at to get over the magic number in this area. As the planner has mentioned, we are going to look at what might make sense to use a portion of that lot, if that makes sense, at our next session.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Marcian, go ahead.
You say that the lots don't have to be contiguous. Can you explain how much has to be in certain lots?
I believe that of the 50 acres that this has to be, 25 has to be one contiguous, and then the remainder of the, I'm gonna get over my skis on what the regulation specifies. For the purposes of this town meeting, that's a moot point. No other parcels have been noticed.
I understand. I'm just trying to possibly come up with some questions that you may want to have answers to when you go to town meeting.
Understood, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Marcy?
So looking at this, if we would have taken the New England ice cream plot and the housing that's along 140, and if you could split zone that piece of PGA Charities property, it would be a very small section of that you would have need to have taken, right?
We're not sure yet. We're gonna be looking at that on Tuesday. We didn't split the New England ice cream because we had removed it.
I understand it was removed. I'm just saying that if it would have been left in and we would have only had to take in a small portion of the PGA charity site to come into compliance for the acreage that you needed.
Correct.
And that would have been a very small portion of land that is not already developed.
Can you read how big that was on this? I can't read.
As we've said, we are going to meet and discuss the final map on Tuesday.
Thank you.
All right. Denise, did you have any questions?
I didn't have any further questions. Thank you, Tim and Paul. I can tell you guys put a lot of work and time into putting this together with Serpide, and I appreciate it. And I am personally a fan of overlays. I think it's a good way of structuring compliance with matters like this. So thank you.
Okay, so without any more from the board, I'll open it up to the audience. If you want to come up and just say your name and address again for the records, please. I didn't say to bring us homework.
My name is Jim Shav, and I lived at 56 Mansfield Avenue, and I didn't bring you any homework. I think it's been mentioned a couple of times that there may be philosophical differences that we can explore, certainly without negating the work the planning board has put into this, and has put into it in good faith. I mean, you can see by the methodology they've employed, they've put a good faith and effort into it. And I can certainly respect the philosophical position they're coming from. I can't share it, but I can respect it. So first I'd like to address the PGA Charities property. It's currently a 68-acre vacant parcel. So currently and I almost hate to use the term, but currently the town is making a profit on this. They are charging more in taxes than they are required to provide in services. And I realize the town's not a company. We don't try to make a profit. Hopefully we try to serve the citizens of the town, but still have to look at dollars and cents. Under this proposal, this lot has a potential for 1,088 residential units. If you deduct the wetland area, and no one knows what the wetland area is. There's currently some shading on the GIS map. If you look at other parcels that have shading on it, and if you look at going way back, almost ancient history, back to the 70s, we had what was called a wetland protection district, which I believe we still have it in the zoning handbook. Is that section 4? And if you look at any of those, they're greatly exaggerated. So the only way we'd know how much wetlands are on there is if we actually did an ANRAD, and that's not gonna happen. I think we can reasonably assume that we could deduct the wetlands area, and it's reasonable that 1,000 units could be sited there under this proposal. A comparable project would be East Main Apartments. It consists of 188 units. It's currently assessed at $43,684,000 as it's taxed at the commercial rate of $13.84. It yields $604,586 per year, or $3,215 per unit annually. That comes in a little later as coming up with a comparable figure to look at this parcel developed. 1,000 similar residential units would yield $3.2 million annually in tax revenue. On the other side, according to the latest census data, we have 6,588 household units. We have 2,376 registered students between the Norton School System, Southeastern Regional, Bristol Agricultural, and those that are placed outside of the system for various reasons, school choice, or we can't accommodate the needs. In any case, we're looking at just dollars and cents. It's students that we have to pay for. This yields a student household ratio of 0.36. Going by that, we should be able to expect 360 students to come from an additional 1,000 residential units. And I know that is debatable. It goes up and down. We've heard all kinds of numbers that just come out of thin air. These numbers aren't actual numbers, but they're derived from actual numbers, and I think they're closer than what we've been hearing. It can be said that multifamilies bring in less students. Yes, if you're building $1.5–2 million golf course condos, most likely you're going to have less students. If you're going to utilize the affordable component, you're going to have more students instead of less. So I think the average will hold. That brings us to an estimated cost of $5,356,440 annually. That number is derived from dividing the school, folk, and ag budgets of $36,540,328 by the 2,376 to derive an estimated $15,379 per student cost. This cost is exclusive of capital expenses, exclusive of shared expenses, and it probably doesn't include some of the out-of-system expenses. I tried to keep the number conservative. Approving this proposal at town meeting doesn't guarantee it, and as Paul has already said, growth isn't going to come right away. It's going to take time. But regardless of how much time it takes, it doesn't matter. This brings us with a potential, exposes us to a potential deficit of $2,336,440. What that does is reduces the available per student funding levels to $14,525, or roughly $600 less per student that we'll have available. We also risk falling below the foundational budget at this point and put Chapter 70 funds at risk, unless, and we'd be forced to do it, unless we make cuts in public safety to fully fund education. Because one thing's for sure, we can't forego the Chapter 70 funds. That's what, $13 million? So we've got a potential of 1,000 units, a potential of requiring more public safety services, at the same time, a potential of being forced to make cuts. For that reason, I think this is a bad proposal, and I'm against it. I think we do need to take advantage of already developed sites. Not as a trick, not as a game we're playing with the state, not saying, well, we'll just use these sites because no one will ever build there. But employing a different methodology, employing one that says that Norton's wants, hopes, dreams, and investments come first before, certainly we're going to comply with the state, but we're not looking to, I guess Tim had said if we don't comply, we're going to be on the naughty list. I don't think we're looking for a gold star. I think we want to comply and keep Norton's needs, hopes, dreams, and goals first. To do that, we look at already developed sites. Not saying they'll never be developed, but saying if they were developed, the trade-off is different than a vacant parcel being brought up into full compliance. Say we have a site with 200 units already on it, and under this proposal, it increases to 400 or 500. It's not good, but it's better than going from 0 to 1,000. In that light, I've marked up the next handout, not homework, the language. Because the language affects us in the same way the map does. First and foremost, it's entitled the Great Woods Overlay District. I'm thinking, one, we should explore other places and accurately describe it as a high-density residential overlay district. That's what it is. That's what we're required to do. Second section, purpose. There's a lot of language there that talks about we're going to promote a lively, prosperous, multifamily neighborhood close to existing municipal services. Do we want to promote that, or do we want to comply? We can simplify it by saying the purpose of the high-density residential overlay district is to meet the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A. We're all set. We don't need to, because what's going to happen, and Steve, you've been on the planning board before, I've done a tour of duty. You're going to have applicants come in with a proposal. You're going to start talking about it, and they're going to say, you said that you promote, and they're going to start reading this language back to us. I don't think that's a smart bargaining position, to put that kind of language out there to have read back to us. As we move forward, in the definitions, there's one of compliance guidelines, which references the compliance guidelines for multifamily zoning districts under Section 3 of the Zoning Act. If you don't already have one, it looks like this. That's all well and good, but there's no need to reference it. There's nothing anywhere else in this language that you would need a reference, so that's just a little bit of housekeeping. We have a definition for mixed-use development and top-of-the-shop housing. You'll notice that I've crossed those off, and I should get to that quickly. And on the next page, the same thing. On the next page, the use tables, I hope it doesn't look too drastic, but we don't really need one. What we need to comply is high-density residential. That's all we need to comply. I want to skip over the next page and get back to it. If we go to the next page where it talks about density bonuses, and that was the reason that I think we need to delete all of that previous language. We've got density bonuses for affordable housing, that we can add a story and go to 4 stories. We've got density bonuses for if we put retail on the first floor and go to 4 stories. If we do both, we go to 5 stories. Do we want 5-story buildings in Norton? That, to me, is too big of an ask. And the state's requiring high-density residential, not downtown Mansfield, which I can't remember. I think that's only 4 stories, isn't it?
I think, is it 4?
If you go through the center of Mansfield,
Some of
is that 4 or is that 5?
4 or 5.
I don't know which one it is.
5.
It is 5.
5 stories.
I
Okay.
think Peter's word.
Okay, I'm not gonna argue with Peter, he's always right. So, yeah, my position is, I think philosophically, we should reject these density bonuses. And I think the rest of it is all relative to that. So if we go back to the dimensional standards, the proposal is a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. That's gonna invite some scary stuff. We've got other places in the bylaw where we talk about commercial and industrial properties requiring landscape buffers. You take 5,000 square feet and put a duplex on it, and you just put a big hardship on all your commercial and industrial neighbors. So my thought there was if we increased it to 90,000 square feet, now we're getting development that is substantial and in fitting with the neighborhood. 5,000 square feet just stuck out like a sore thumb to me. Minimum lot frontage was 75 feet, 300 seems more reasonable. And then finally, the maximum units per acre, 16 is only one unit above compliance, but we don't need to be above compliance. Let's just make it 15. Let's comply, and let's put Norton first. Take it back to the map, and then I promise I'll finish. I didn't mean to make it forever. There are a lot of parcels in town that would be more suitable. I realize that requires we would have to reject it at town meeting and come back in the spring, or possibly a special before the end of the year. We could do that. Hey, we did it for something else. But anyways, if we stick with the parcel we have right now, if you zone this overlay a depth of 400 feet on either side of Mansfield Avenue, starting at the Mansfield line for 2,400 feet, we are well protected, and it's done. It creates an area that very little likelihood of us being, certainly can be developed, and the state needs to see that. If we do something that can't be developed, they're gonna shoot us down. It can be developed, but we can't be clobbered by it. Another area to look at, 147 Elm Street. You know, it's possible for free. We could provide enticement for somebody to develop that property. I couldn't help but think during the sewer presentation that even if we go for just the force main, we're in the hook for $11 million. We can assess that all to that property. But if it's not developed, we're out $1 million. It's a brownfield site. Do we want to spend $1 million on a maybe? I don't know. So that's one potential place. Another one would be, you brought up the trailer park, not the one at 157 Mansfield Ave, the one at 250 Mansfield Ave, Peter. Yeah, that could be developed. There would be a greater number of units there, but it doesn't go from 0 to the speed limit.
So I definitely understand your reasoning on changing the parcels, but they're gonna revise that map for a town meeting anyway, so we can.
Correct.
We can discuss that.
And my fear is we're gonna need to reject that and come back. Or if we go with 400 feet from the Mansfield line down, and I hear the argument that maybe it hasn't been noticed, I reject that argument. I think we could do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Come on.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond to that?
Yeah, if you'd like to, yeah. Go ahead.
I appreciate all Mr. Chavez's thoughts. He's spoken at the FinCom meeting and our previous planning board meeting. For zoning articles, when there are specific parcels involved, we are required to notice them and notice parcels within a certain distance of that. That is what gives them the ability to know my parcels are being discussed at planning board meetings and potentially at town meeting. I am not considering any adjustments to any lots that are not shown highlighted in orange for the purposes of the town meeting, period.
Yeah, understood, Tim, but I think Mr. Chavez was referring to if it fails the town meeting and going forward. But yeah, no, the parcels, the abutters do need to be noticed. So I agree with you on that. Okay, we have a speaker, just again, put your name in there.
Debbie Winston, Elm Street. disappointed, Alex, in your commending Paul Giuseppe and Tim and the rest of them.
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you there. I don't think,
Okay, we'll just
Direct.
say general leadership, our town manager, okay? All I kept hearing is that this town constantly votes no. The reason they constantly vote no, even when they support the schools and other things, is because we do not trust that our leaders have our best interests. Tim has not addressed sufficiently why they want to go over 750, why you would try to increase those numbers and put more of a burden on our schools and our fine firemen and policemen. So what you've actually done is cause the citizens to say no once again and not move your agenda ahead. So I don't understand. You've put a year and a half in this and you digging into that TPC. When other proposals have been brought to you that would be more palatable and beneficial to Norton.
thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna
Mr. Chair, would
recommend.
you like me can I just clarify just on one point there, just to restate for everybody?
Yeah, quickly, Tim.
So, the state's requirement is 750 units on buildable acres. So, the number that the compliance model provided by CERCAD ignores wetlands, so we do that afterwards. So we're going to, our goal is to have an area the state will see as 750. But if you look at just, this is the lot size, divide by the number of units, it's going to be above 750.
Okay, thank you for that clarification,
May I
Tim.
address him?
So, no.
It speaks.
No. I'm gonna recommend that, because they're gonna be meeting on the 8th and they're gonna come to us on the 10th, I'm gonna recommend we don't take any action tonight if that's, unless the board would like to.
It's fine.
No, we shouldn't take action until
Okay.
they define it.
Okay. All right, so I guess that's it for number 17 and 18, so we can start on the list of the rest of the articles here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and Paul, very much appreciated your time tonight. And again, I gotta say it again, your hard work, I mean, whether we agree or disagree on this, I think everybody knows how much time and effort you've all put into this, and I don't think anybody's done this with any ill intent. So I wanna make sure that that's known. All right, thank you, guys.
Article 1, Article 1, unpaid bills. So we have the following unpaid bills, and the Finance Committee has voted to recommend the town, we have two bills, both of them $867.74 from the Norton Public Schools. One for custodial fees for town meeting and another for custodial fees for the elections. And two bills from Amazon, one for the Council on Aging, $49.75, and one for the Fire Department, $98.98. So that's a total that would come out of free cash of $1,884.21. And the Water Department has one bill of $579 to analytical balance, and that would come out of their current water receipts.
Okay, well, when I first heard that the school was building this, I thought that was a joke. Okay. Are we billing them for custodial after they use the rooms here?
We did plan on it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
what action do we need to take so that that sort of thing stops happening, that we stop billing each other for uses of our own facilities?
That's a great question, and I think that's something that we'll answer with our working group with FinCom and the school committee, but I think from my initial talks, that's something that should stop.
Thank you.
I mean, at least they could pay 70% of the costs, because they're 70% of the budget, so, just saying.
Yeah. I mean, I said this at a few meetings back, I mean, it's a small amount, but it adds up, things add up like that, and then we can't fund overtime for police or fire, or hire extra teachers.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Marson, go
I
ahead.
want to be clear that I'm not just talking about the schools charging the town for it. I'm just saying, anytime that any of us are using a town facility, we shouldn't be charging each other for uses of our facilities.
Oh, absolutely, I was, sorry it came off that way, but I was joking about us billing the school, so I apologize if it came off differently.
Thank you.
But, so this, we're looking for a motion to endorse.
A motion to recommend Article 1 with $1,884.21 coming from free cash.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Next is separation expense. And let me just open this.
Do you need to make a motion for the enterprise as well, the water?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, Denise.
I make a motion that we recommend $579 from the water enterprise fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, Denise.
Separation expense, $163,159 from free cash. And just to give you an idea what those are, the treasurer's office, $16,600, the town clerk, $23,434, police department, $54,328, the fire department, $52,000, and the board of health, $16,797.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I recommend we support the separation expenses, Article 2, in the amount of $163,159 from free cash.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on.
And this, not sure if I'm ready. This is a request to amend the bylaw, personnel bylaws. We had a salary survey done by GovHR, and as part of that salary survey, you can see on the chart that I provided you the current ranges and the recommended ranges from GovHR. And just to point out, one of the ranges that is really low right now is the town clerk. And talking to various people looking at the position, none of them were looking at the salary that is currently in the range. It would be in the new range, but not this range. And so what we did is, if you look at the information, I don't know if any of you need a new salary survey. You should have it, but here's some, if you don't. What we did is we used the 50th percentile on the salary survey, and they based their ranges around that. So we didn't go with the highest, the lowest, we went with the 50th percentile.
Any questions?
Just one. This is the first time we're seeing this.
You haven't seen that before?
We haven't discussed it. Have you seen it? Anybody else seen this?
No.
I don't think we've discussed it, but I think we did get it in an email, I think. But we haven't discussed it yet.
Yeah, I'd like to see this in percentages too,
Sure.
what the percentage increases are, because we've talked a lot about keeping our increases to the 2%.
No one, most of the people here, almost everyone is in the range, so it's not affecting,
Yeah.
other than one position, it's not affecting the salaries at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we hold off on this until next week?
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
suggest, yeah. Yeah, we can hold off until next week on this one.
And on the operating budget amendments, would you like to hear from the chief and the deputy chief while they're here on their? what
They
they're-
made-
Sure, they sat here all night, yeah.
Through all this, absolutely. If you'd like to speak, you absolutely are welcome. Either one of you, or none.
I mean, I think they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Good evening.
It's 75% of the overtime that was cut. I'd like to hear the town manager say cut. He doesn't usually like that word, but it was a cut. And then some expenses. So it's not where we would like to be, but it's better than we have.
Thank you, Chief.
So I'll just, same thing, the 75% for the overtime is obviously what they get back.
We don't
We
have.
had a couple things, we've had some mechanical breakdowns, so we started the year basically in the May with one of our ambulances right from the start. Basically the blower went and a couple other things, but other than that, pretty much some of the expenses.
75% of that looking for. He read it off earlier. I don't think he gave us the handout.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
Mike, that sheet that you were reading from before, earlier?
Yeah.
No, not that, not this one that we've
The
had.
draft,
Yeah, I mean, we should have that,
The amount for that article.
yeah.
right, we should finish that up tomorrow and get that to you. I was just giving you some of the ideas.
I would also ask that we look at the items that are in that proposed operating budget and consider what's actually operating budget that's gonna be carried over year versus things that are one-time expenses.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good point, Denise.
All right, Article 7. I'd recommend that we put $1.5 million into the capital improvement fund out of free cash.
Any questions?
I'm assuming that's just to secure some funding for the future, that nothing's planned for that currently.
Some of it would be spent, but it'll hold a lot for the future. The capital looked at the plan this week, and hopefully we're gonna get a meeting together next Tuesday to vote on the plan, and then they'll bring the plan to you for Article 8 next Thursday.
Mike, what was the amount that we went over last night? What was that total?
I didn't bring my capital folder with me.
So what I'm leading to is 1.5 million. What has been every year? What has been the number?
It's varied. Last year we did put $1 million in.
So I think, myself, I think $1 million, if that's what the track record is,
Well,
and it's
yeah.
sustained,
We also had $1 million less in free cash last year too, so, we have a year where we can get some money into the capital fund and into the stabilization fund and keep roughly 2.5 million of free cash available, so you start next year in May with a balance balance in your free cash.
I just think, in my personal opinion, I think, you know, that extra 500 grand going in stabilization, I think would, I mean, we can appropriate that at any time. Can we change it anytime?
Out of stabilization?
Yeah.
It would require a 2/3 vote at a town meeting.
At town meeting. Okay.
Mr.
My
Chair?
2 cents.
Mr. Presley?
Mr. Units, if we don't say yes to this tonight, how does it affect you coming back with the number for Article 8 next week?
No, the capital committee can still come back to you with an article and a recommendation, but.
I would just like to see,
Yeah.
I just see a lot of open space on these as we're going down and not a lot of, not the numbers that I'd like to see in them as we're going along. So if you'll have more information for us next week and we can run right through these so that we have the information as opposed to just continuing to have to ask for it at every
I'd like to have it
article.
as soon as it's available, to look at it beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the point of calling this meeting was to make sure we got through these, and I know, the warrant, what closes on the 14th?
Right.
Yeah, so we're at crunch time, and this is the time for the numbers, and I know FinCom chair is here, and she'd like to see those too, and I think they're meeting Monday. So if they're meeting Monday, they're gonna have to go through stuff that we haven't even seen yet, which goes against what I've been asking for quite a while, so, anything we skip over here, we gotta have those numbers. I don't wanna have FinCom coming, meeting at 2 hours before town meeting and going through these again and wasting time.
See, Madam Chair, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, come on up, Sandy.
Sandy Howard, 14 Tending Place. I just wanted to, as the chair of the finance committee, just see if we can get some ideas for, you know, what your priorities would be for the free cash in terms of the budget supplements. I mean, I know you don't have all the numbers, but the more information you can give to finance committee to, you know, talk about what direction you might be heading in terms of, are we spending free cash on ongoing, you know, budget expenses, or are we sticking to you know, what we tried to do in the past, which is just on the one-time expenses. There's definitely some things in the budget supplements that are ongoing. So I think Finance Committee was looking for select board's input on their priorities for that.
I'm not gonna speak for the whole board, I'll speak for myself. I think, one-time expenses are what I would like to see in this. I know, and again, I wish Nick was here, but Nick had a plan for the teachers, and they were ongoing expenses, but it was going to be backed by the, I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, it was gonna be, any of those positions were supposed to stick around and be built into their budget going forward. That would be the only reason I'm okay with that, but I mean, I don't wanna speak for everybody else, but I think that's my goal.
Okay.
The only number that we have right now, Sandy, is a total number for budget supplements. It's not really broken out on anything that I've seen. I mean, I know Mike read it off to us, but I don't have anything that I can say, yes, this is what we're thinking of doing.
Yeah,
I wrote it down as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of them are definitely, to your point, the concern of, do we fund something only to not be able to fund it next year? So that's the FinCom's concern. So again, any insights that you can give us, because Monday's our last meeting, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be meeting before town meeting.
That's true, which hopefully we won't be changing a lot of things at that point.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the exact concern, Sandy. It doesn't make sense to fund something that's an ongoing operating budget item if we can't continue to fund it going forward. It's just like a yo-yo. You have a job, you don't have a job, have a job, don't have a job, doesn't make sense.
I think we're all.
I think everybody's on board that if it's not
100%.
sustainable with the 3% budget, then we shouldn't be funding it out of free cash.
Yeah.
All right,
Does that help, Sandy?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Is this about the article?
It's about, do I have a right to ask you to reconsider the Elm Street vote? And was it clear that it's going to town meeting as is, or could the select board?
It's going to town meeting whether the select board endorses it or not. It's gonna go to town meeting no matter what.
But I would like it clear whether, I understand you're not endorsing it, I would like it clear whether are they endorsing it as is, or the plan B just to do 47L.
So we're beyond that one now, unless somebody on the board wants to bring it back up. Other than that, we're gonna keep moving through our articles here.
Yeah, I don't see any need to revisit it.
All right, thank you.
Article 12. Well, Article 10, I don't believe we're gonna need, but we'll leave it there, and it could be a no action, or you could vote no action right now.
Article 10?
Article 10.
Will we have to vote no action or just not?
Just,
We can vote, yeah.
um,
So do you want to vote no action?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I'll make a motion that we take no action on Article 10.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Article 12, this article, and I know Steve can speak more on it too, from the building committee perspective, this article would clarify at town meeting that money that was appropriated for the building projects in total, all three, the field, the council on aging, and the municipal center, that the funds could be used to finish off any of the building project that has to be completed.
Okay, so I alluded to this last week, but I didn't have it in front of me, so I couldn't give you the exact numbers. So from the permanent building committee, the demolition of the town hall, as was originally approved at town meeting, looks like it's gonna be $1,944,132. And this is as of our meeting last Monday. Remaining funds from town hall are $898,472. Remaining funds for the senior center are $793,589. And I believe there's at least $75,000 left from the field project. So that, I mean, that in itself shows that all three of these projects were under budget, which is fantastic. That leaves us a deficit of $29,883. And I and everybody else were adamant that we did not want to go back to town meeting and request another $30,000. So there are other articles.
So then you need the other article. I thought that you were just gonna repurpose money that existed and you didn't need Article 10.
Okay.
If you need Article 10, we'll need do we have a final number from the OPM yet? Or
This is the final number from the OPM. And this is just the math we did with the, you said there was $100,000 in other articles that,
yeah,
okay, so yeah, I think we should keep Article 10 and not do no action on that.
okay. I'll bring those numbers to the next meeting for, there's 3 or 4 articles that you could move into the project.
So, I'm sorry I got into numbers and I didn't explain what was going on, okay. Right now, each of those numbers I gave you, the 898,793, those are what the project was under budget. And we can't take the under budget funds from the senior center and apply it to the demolition of town hall without town meeting allowing them to be combined. So apologies, I should have explained that first. Combining all of those, which is what Article 12 would do,
Right.
would still leave us about $30,000 short, and that's if, nothing else happens. Mike had mentioned that there are other articles out there with remaining funds, and we can combine all those hopefully at town meeting, and that's what the placeholder article number 10 was for, so.
Okay, we'll do that at the next meeting. Those are articles that were appropriated during the whole town hall senior center studies and for the senior center parking lot at one point, and so we could move those back into the project.
So we have to go back and rescind our recommended no action?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
question first before we do that.
Sure.
If I remember, when we voted on these articles to build these buildings at town meeting, the demolition of the old town hall was included in the price. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if it was included in the price, how did we come up short?
So this is before my time on the building committee, but I believe initially, Mike, you can correct me, right at the very beginning, they thought that that was too expensive, so they pulled that out of the proposal. And it is very early on in the process. I can't speak to why or why that happened at all, because I wasn't involved, but that's the case.
So before they go out to bid, they look at, from their estimators, the architects and OPMs have estimators that review the status of a cost that they think they're gonna be hit with during the project. And at that time, they felt that there wasn't gonna be enough money so they eliminated the demo of the building so that they would have enough money to complete the project. And in hindsight, it came in, both projects came in a lot lower than they anticipated. But at the time, they didn't know that, so when they signed a contract with M. O'Connor, that wasn't part of the contract. All that was in the contract was the demo of the food pantry.
Yeah, so at the time, the building committee voted to remove that from the project. That's all I can say on that. And I should mention that the total cost of $1.9 million for removal of the building, they included a 20% contingency. I think that can get knocked down. But just in case it is that high, that's why I think we should try to combine these other articles. We don't want to leave anything to chance. And I said at building committee meetings, I think everybody there agrees too. We do not want to go back to the town for more money.
Yeah.
Even if it's $5,000, I don't want to do that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I make a motion that we reconsider taking no action on Article number 10.
Second.
Okay, motion to reconsider taking no action on Article 10. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So is an aye vote,
To reconsider.
so we put, okay. Yes, aye.
So now we don't do anything until we
Right.
get
Okay.
until we get the numbers of those funds that are available.
Mr. Chair, quick question while we're still on that topic.
Absolutely.
That 1.9 includes a 20% contingency?
Yes.
Okay.
And it also includes, and this should be in front of you too, so that's why, I wouldn't want to take action on this yet, but the town hall demo fees, let's see, the OPM fees, the contingency, and the construction costs. Okay, any other questions on that? All right. So this will make sure you have copies of this before the next meeting too.
Great.
Article 14, Lake and Pond Management. As you can see, it's been working great, the treatment of the ponds. I can remember on Winnicott when there was a little blue spot, a little dot in the middle of the lake, and the rest was all green. The cost is about $114,000 to $120,000 a year for engineering and the treatment itself. We have been borrowing for this, and we have $220,000 remaining. So I'm recommending $150,000 from free cash be put into the lake and pond management, and that would give us $350,000, which would get us 3 more years without having to go out and borrow money to treat Chartley the reservoir and Winnicott.
That makes sense to me.
You said 200,000, is that what you said?
150.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I recommend I make a motion that we recommend Article number 14 and to move $150,000 from free cash.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Article 16, it's there as a placeholder, but I don't know.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I make a motion that we take no action on Article 16.
Do we want to remove it?
Yes.
Can I suggest that we hold, since that was Kevin's article?
Yeah.
I did speak to Kevin, and he said we can remove it if we desire, but I'm fine.
We're fine
waiting
if we
until
want to
next
wait
week.
till next meeting.
Yeah, I'm fine waiting for him.
Yep.
So what are you doing on that now, just leaving it?
We're gonna leave it, we'll,
More than likely, it'll just be removed, but I want Kevin to voice his opinion on it too, so.
Article 19, OPEB, recommend 125,000. We've been increasing our payment into OPEB by $5,000 a year to get slowly to our goal of $200,000. It's a necessary evil. No one loves putting money to sit in the OPEB, but it's something we have to do.
Okay, so 125,000.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
I make a motion that we recommend moving $125,000 out of free cash into OPEB for Article 19.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And Article 20, stabilization, my recommendation was to put $1 million into stabilization, and that would get us up over a little over our 5% for our stabilization account. So we've been trying to get to that point for a number of years. It's good to get to that point, and then every year, if we put something in there, we don't have to put that much in there, just keep up so we stay at our 5%. But once we get to this point, it's a good spot to be in, that we're not playing catch-up.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
could we wait till our next meeting for that to see if we want to put more than that into the stabilization? See how our capital comes in?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Is that it?
We're giving Sandy more work, though. All right. Is there anything else? Anyone?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marson?
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please don't say yes. Thank you. Thank you all very much.